Sometimes, a single decision made in the heat of a tense moment can echo far beyond the people directly involved. In the world of international relations, the smallest spark can ignite a firestorm, and the consequences can be felt across continents and generations. When military forces stand face to face, every gesture, every word, and every action is loaded with meaning and risk. History is filled with moments where a single event has changed the course of nations. Sometimes, it's a decision made in a split second that determines whether peace holds or chaos erupts. The world watches, holding its breath, as leaders and soldiers alike are forced to make impossible choices. In the Gulf of Oman, as the US and Iran prepared for historic peace talks, a single gunshot shattered fragile hopes. The sound echoed not just across the water, but through diplomatic halls and newsrooms around the globe. In an instant, the promise of dialogue was replaced by the threat of escalation. A US Navy vessel intercepted an Iranian-flagged cargo ship, leading to a dramatic seizure that would become the focus of international attention. What began as a routine patrol quickly spiraled into a high-stakes confrontation, with both sides scrambling to respond. The incident sent shockwaves worldwide, threatening to unravel years of painstaking diplomatic progress. News outlets broke the story within minutes, and world leaders were forced to react to a crisis that seemed to come out of nowhere. Suddenly, the future of Middle East stability and the global economy hung in the balance. The Strait of Hormuz, a vital artery for the world's oil supply, became a flashpoint. Traders watched nervously as markets fluctuated, and ordinary people wondered what tomorrow would bring. This story is about how quickly things can change and how delicate peace can be. Negotiations that once seemed promising were now overshadowed by uncertainty. The world was reminded that peace is never guaranteed. It must be protected every single day. We'll explore the perspectives of the US and Iran, the international fallout, and the complex web of alliances and rivalries that shape every decision. In the halls of the United Nations and in back-channel talks, diplomats raced to contain the crisis before it spiraled further. And we'll examine the economic stakes of this vital waterway, where billions of dollars in trade pass each day. The world's dependence on these shipping lanes means that any disruption can have ripple effects, impacting everything from fuel prices to food supplies. Was this a necessary act of enforcement, or a grave miscalculation that could have been avoided? Experts and analysts debated the motives and the risks, searching for answers in a sea of uncertainty. One ship, one shot, and the world watched as history teetered on a knife's edge. The fate of nations seemed to rest on a single moment, as millions followed the unfolding drama. The consequences would reach far beyond the Gulf, touching lives and economies around the world. In this chapter, we'll uncover how a single shot can change everything, and why the world can never afford to look away. Dawn broke over the Gulf of Oman, painting the horizon with hues of gold and crimson. The sea was calm, but beneath the tranquil surface, tensions simmered. This narrow stretch of water, connecting the Arabian Sea to the Strait of Hormuz, is more than just a scenic route. It's a lifeline for the world's energy supply and a crossroads of international interests. Every day, countless cargo ships and oil tankers navigate these busy shipping lanes, carrying goods and fuel to distant continents. The Gulf of Oman is a vital artery for global trade, and any disruption here sends shockwaves through markets and governments alike. On this particular morning, an Iranian cargo ship drew the attention of the US Navy. Under close surveillance, the vessel was suspected of violating an international blockade, possibly transporting contraband or military supplies. The US Navy's presence was unmistakable. Warships shadowed the cargo vessel, their intentions clear. Over loudspeakers, the US Navy issued repeated warnings, demanding the Iranian crew halt for inspection. But the crew, resolute and silent, ignored the calls, maintaining their course as if nothing was amiss. The standoff grew more tense with every passing minute. With diplomacy failing, tensions escalated. The US Navy fired warning shots across the bow, the sharp cracks echoing over the water. The message was unmistakable: comply or face consequences. When the Iranian ship still refused to stop, disabling rounds were fired, striking the engine room. Smoke billowed from the vessel as it lost power, drifting helplessly in the current. The world watched as the situation teetered on the edge of disaster. The vessel finally ground to a halt. US forces moved in swiftly, boarding the ship with precision and urgency. Armed personnel secured the Iranian crew, searching every compartment for illicit cargo, evidence, or hidden threats. In Washington, officials called the operation a necessary enforcement of maritime law, insisting it was about upholding international norms and ensuring the safety of global shipping. But in Tehran, the reaction was swift and furious. Iranian officials condemned the seizure as an act of aggression, a blatant violation of their sovereignty. Details of what was found on board remained secret, fueling speculation, rumors, and outrage across Iran. For the United States, the incident was about security, about preventing the flow of dangerous materials and maintaining order in a volatile region. For Iran, it was a direct challenge, a violation of their rights, and a provocation that could not go unanswered. The world's attention turned to the Gulf of Oman. What began as a routine patrol had erupted into a global crisis, with news outlets scrambling to piece together the facts and governments weighing their next moves. Behind closed doors, diplomats and military leaders pored over reports, but the lack of transparency only deepened mistrust. What was really on that ship? And what would happen next? In a matter of hours, the stage was set for a diplomatic showdown. Urgent talks began, with both sides seeking allies and leverage, knowing that the stakes had never been higher. The incident threatened to spiral beyond a single ship, drawing in navies, governments, and the world's attention. The fragile balance of peace in the region now hung by a thread. As the sun set over the Persian Gulf, uncertainty loomed. The seizure in the Gulf of Oman was no longer just a maritime incident. It had become a flashpoint, threatening the fragile peace itself. In the immediate aftermath of the incident, the United States moved quickly to defend its actions, describing the seizure as a routine operation within international law. Officials emphasized that such measures were not only standard practice, but also a necessary step to ensure the safety and stability of the region, especially given the ongoing tensions in the Persian Gulf. The U.S. military presence in the area was highlighted as a deterrent against illegal activities and a reassurance to allies concerned about security threats. American leaders insisted that their actions were measured and calculated, designed to prevent escalation rather than provoke it. Officials reiterated that they acted with restraint, targeting only a vessel suspected of violating international sanctions, and stressed that no unnecessary force was used during the operation. Washington framed the move as a matter of law enforcement, not an act of aggression or provocation. The administration sought to reassure both domestic and international audiences that the U.S. remained committed to upholding international norms. The message was clear: rules would be enforced, and red lines, carefully drawn over years of diplomacy, would not be crossed without consequence. Iran, however, saw things very differently. Iranian leaders condemned the seizure, calling it nothing short of armed piracy and a blatant violation of their national sovereignty. Tehran's response was swift and fiery. Officials demanded the immediate release of the ship, warning that any further interference would be met with strong retaliation. The incident quickly became a flashpoint in the already tense relationship between the two nations. For many Iranians, this was about more than just a single ship. It was a matter of national pride, and a test of their resolve to resist what they saw as American pressure and interference. The incident quickly became a rallying cry for hardliners within Iran, fueling anti-US sentiment and uniting various factions against a common adversary. Both sides dug in, each claiming the moral high ground and refusing to back down. The rhetoric intensified, with leaders on both sides making bold statements to their respective audiences. As the diplomatic rift widened, world leaders watched anxiously, bracing for the possibility of further escalation and urging both sides to exercise restraint. The fragile trust that had been painstakingly built over months of negotiations was suddenly in jeopardy, leaving the future of US-Iran relations hanging in the balance. The timing of the seizure couldn't have been worse. Just days before crucial peace talks, hopes for a breakthrough evaporated. The act was seen in Iran as a deliberate provocation, casting doubt on US intentions. Iranian negotiators faced a dilemma: proceed and appear weak, or withdraw and risk blame for failure. Hardliners in Tehran seized the moment, demanding an end to talks. The diplomatic process teetered, overshadowed by suspicion and anger. The incident threatened to undo months of patient negotiation. Trust, painstakingly built, was shattered in an instant. The shadow of the seized ship loomed over the negotiating table. The chance for peace was slipping away. The aftermath was chaos. Diplomatic momentum stalled, replaced by anger and doubt. Iranian officials, once cautiously optimistic, now questioned the entire peace process. The seizure empowered hardliners who opposed talks from the start. Iran suspended its participation, demanding the ship's release before any dialogue. International allies urged restraint, fearing years of diplomacy could unravel. The US insisted talks and the seizure were separate, but Iran saw them as inseparable. The bridge to peace now seemed broken. Goodwill evaporated, replaced by renewed hostility. The collapse of talks was a major setback, exposing the fragility of diplomacy. The path forward was uncertain, the window for peace closing fast, all because of a single confrontation at sea. As US-Iran tensions soared, China watched with concern. Heavily invested in the region and reliant on Gulf oil, China called for restraint. Beijing's statement urged all parties to avoid escalation, a warning it had issued before. China's interests are clear. Stability in the Middle East is vital for its economy. Any conflict threatens energy supplies and investments. By advocating diplomacy, China positioned itself as a responsible global player. Its call for calm increased international pressure on both Washington and Tehran. China's response highlighted the world's shifting balance of power. The US could no longer act without considering other major players. The dragon's warning was clear. Peace in the Gulf is a global concern. The Strait of Hormuz is the world's most critical energy choke point. Only 21 miles wide, it carries a fifth of global oil shipments daily. Any disruption, conflict, accident, or blockade would send shockwaves through the global economy. The US Navy patrols to ensure free navigation. Iran sees this as a threat. The seizure in the Gulf of Oman exposed just how vulnerable this region is. Tensions here can escalate rapidly, threatening the world's energy supply. The incident was a stark reminder. Stability in the strait is a global priority. One misstep could trigger a crisis far beyond the Middle East. News of the seizure rattled global markets. Oil prices surged as traders feared disruption in the Strait of Hormuz. The risk of conflict introduced new volatility, raising costs for consumers worldwide. Stock markets dipped, airlines and energy companies braced for higher expenses. The incident exposed the world's economic interdependence. Governments and central banks faced new challenges as inflation fears grew. A single event in the Gulf threatened to ripple through every economy. The crisis was not just diplomatic, it was financial. The world was reminded how fragile stability truly is. Was the seizure a strategic move or a costly blunder? Some argue it was a show of strength, meant to pressure Iran ahead of talks. Others see it as a disastrous miscalculation, destroying trust and empowering hardliners. The incident derailed a historic chance for peace, replacing hope with hostility. History will judge whether this was a bold gambit or a tragic error. What's certain? One decision in the Gulf set off a chain reaction with global consequences. The stakes are higher than ever. In international relations, a single action can change the future for millions.